Why is it so difficult to get out of bed to the sound of your alarm? How many hours of sleep are you supposed to get? Is it true that you should be in bed by 11 o'clock? Are there actually two types of people, night owls and larks, or is that a myth? Which one of the biohacking gadgets is going to assess your sleeping patterns best? How do you get better quality sleep? Research shows that if you get less sleep than you should be getting, or if something prevents you from getting a good night's sleep, or if you don't have a consistent sleep schedule or good sleep hygiene, your cognitive functions get weaker, you get sick more often, your lifespan gets shorter, and your happiness levels drop significantly. Sleep is the most important thing, really. So I've decided to make several videos about sleep and the different scientifically proven ways of optimizing it. I'll tell you about my experience boosting my sleep quality using science, some experiments on myself, and also various gadgets. Today, we're going to speak about when you should go to sleep, how many hours of sleep you should get, and how to find out which sleep schedule works best for you. I'm Greg Mustreader. Let's go. There's a myth that the best quality sleep takes place between 10 p.m. and 12 a.m. or from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. I've seen different versions floating around. The most interesting part is that neither of these statements is backed by scientific research. What's backed, however, is this. Every person has their own circadian rhythms, what's called a chronotype. There really are night owls, larks, and everything in between. Your chronotype is partially determined by genetics and partially by your social environment, such as habits that span over many years. Your chronotype can also change with age. You've likely noticed that the elderly tend to go to bed before midnight and wake up in the early hours of the morning, for example. What's the consensus here? Well, if you have trouble sleeping early, which leads you to wake up tired the next day, maybe you've got a night owl chronotype rather than a chronotype of a lark. If that's the case, instead of forcing yourself to adjust to a sleep schedule that doesn't work for you, you could try going to bed late and sleeping in. If you don't know the type of sleep schedule that suits you, try testing it. If you've always been an early bird, but you still have trouble getting up in the morning, try following a night owl lifestyle. Maybe you'll find that you feel more well-rested that way. But try not to make any kinds of conclusions after only a couple of days of switching it up. Your body will need some time to adjust and get used to the new sleep schedule. But remember that the problem may not have to do with your chronotype at all. Maybe it's the case of not getting enough sleep or sleeping too much, or maybe the problems with your sleep hygiene. We'll get to this in my next video. By the way, don't forget to click the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell button next to it in order not to miss my next videos. When I tell people about chronotypes, I often hear something along the lines of, well, everybody says they are a night owl until they get a job and start getting up at 7, at which point it all works out. You fall asleep the moment your head hits the pillow with no problems whatsoever. So there is no such thing as a night owl. But this, what I've just described, is an example of a forced social readjustment. By the way, it can be very bad for you because it causes your stress levels to go up. It's sad, but most schools, universities, and office jobs favor the early rise schedule, which benefits the larks, but not the owls. That's a very real bias, and people suffer because of it. Different studies show varying numbers, but on average, larks seem to make up around 40% of people, owls 30%, and the rest are something in between the two. That means around a third of the population is forced to adjust to a lifestyle that simply doesn't work for them. They develop a case of what's called social jet lag, and have to deal with it for the rest of their lives. I'm sure this problem is going to be addressed sometime in the future. After all, solving this problem is likely to lead to both a drastic growth in productivity and the universal increase of GDP. As for me, I go to bed at 2 a.m. and get up at 10. I will make a separate video talking about just that. Unfortunately, sometimes I mess up my schedule because I either go out partying or have work deadlines, but on the whole, I manage to stay on top of it. I've tried different sleep schedules and the 2 to 10 seems to work best for me. According to the National Sleep Foundation of the United States, an average 18 to 64-year-old needs somewhere between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. This number is different for children and the elderly. Kids need to sleep longer hours, while the elderly require less. Of course, these numbers are only reflective of the average. That doesn't mean that every single person needs between 7 and 9 hours of sleep a night. There are some people whose genetic makeup allows them to function just fine on as little as 4, 5, or 6 hours of sleep. Napoleon was like this, apparently. There are also other people for whom 8 or 9 hours are not enough and they require as many as 10. It's important to remember that we're all different. The only way to find out what works for you is trial and error. When I left an international law firm I used to work at 3 years ago, I was suffering from a chronic case of sleep deprivation. For some time after leaving, all I did was travel, party, rest, until eventually I decided to optimize my life and my productivity. I already had a rather popular blog and a podcast in Russian back then, but not in English. There was enough to do without it at the time. And so I made a decision to find out the minimum amount of sleep that I needed in order to stay healthy and productive before moving on to everything else I wanted to do. At the firm, I often got no more than 5 to 6 hours of sleep per night. So I was constantly sleep deprived and having to work on both the company projects and my own things. This kind of lifestyle didn't suit me at all. From the beginning, I knew that living like this drained me both physically and mentally. This is why I tried switching to a 7 hours a night schedule for 3 weeks in a row. For that entire time, I went to bed at roughly the same time every day and got up roughly at the same time every day as well. So I slept from around 2 a.m. to about 9. After 3 weeks had passed, I realized that I was still not getting enough sleep. It was still really difficult to get myself out of bed every morning. So then I tried sleeping for 8 hours from 2 to 10, and that's when I started feeling much better. I try to stick to this schedule to this day. Have a go at trying out different sleep schedules and you're sure to find out what works for you too. Whenever I end up disrupting my sleep schedule, I always try to gradually get myself back into it. For example, on Saturday, I go out partying somewhere till, let's say, 5 a.m. Then I get an alarm for 12, which gives me 7 hours of sleep rather than 8, so that on Sunday I'm a little bit sleep deprived. So this, however, makes it easier for me to go to bed earlier the next day, so instead of going to bed at 5 on Sunday, I end up going to bed at 3. And then I set up an alarm for a 10 a.m. on Monday. And there you go, I'm basically back to normal. A couple of days of slight sleep deprivation never really hurt anybody. I want to take a moment just to talk about the importance of having a consistent sleep schedule. Try going to bed and waking up at exactly the same time every day. There are a lot of studies that clearly demonstrate that having an unstable sleep schedule is harmful for your body. Try not to disrupt your circadian rhythms. You could sleep for as long as you want, but you may still feel tired afterwards, because one day you went to bed at 10 and another at 3 a.m. You have to try and avoid that. If you don't manage to consistently fall asleep at the time you plan to be asleep by, then having a good sleep hygiene could help. Sleep hygiene is a set of rules which allows you to sleep to be as healthy and as effective as it can physically be. I think the most important things that make up good sleep hygiene are expressed in the following set of adjectives: dark, quiet, clean, humid, cool, and relaxing. These are the main points, though there are others as well. I'm going to talk about each one of these points in the next video. Before you go, I'd like to remind you that I have a page on Patreon, a platform where you can support my content if you want to, in return for unique services. For example, you could sign up to become a member of a private Mustreader club. We have a private group chat where we exchange useful links and ideas, talk about books, biohacking, transhumanism, and many other things. Some people end up collaborating on various projects after getting to know each other on there. So it's an awesome place. And by becoming a patron, you could also get access to some exclusive content that I make, such as exclusive podcasts, which don't exist anywhere else on the internet, as well as a membership to my book club. You can find the link to my Patreon down in the description below. See you next week. I'm Greg Mustreader. Bye bye.